Hey fellow nerds, welcome back. This is Beto. I apologize for the long delay on uploading the second part of my initial video, which I uploaded a few months back regarding my server, my home data network here. I know in YouTube standards that seems to be like an eternity. Without getting into all the details, I recently had a newborn, so really didn't get a chance to follow up with that soon thereafter. A lot of you have already reached out and inquired and commented and wanted to know all the juicy details regarding the equipment, how my home network here is set up, the different components within the setup here. But we are here. I am live from the bowels of my basement, where this actually server rack is located at. I happened to luck out in getting this a few years back. I got a great deal on a sale that I found actually locally through an office that was liquidating. And I found them actually, I believe, through Craigslist. And the nice thing about it is they actually have, since they were liquidating, they were getting rid of a lot of their own data network equipment, and amongst them were these racks. In fact, they had two of these on sale, and I picked up a lifetime of a deal with this. I ended up paying about $120 if memory serves me right. Certainly not more than 150 bucks. And so I couldn't pass that up. It was such a good deal. It is a little loud in this room, obviously, because I am running some equipment that's on 24/7, specifically my servers. I know I've received a lot of questions and inquiries, and to my surprise, when I initially uploaded this high overview video a few months back, it was really meant for just a couple of my colleagues to kind of show them the progress that I've been making over the years, making not only the changes to my server rack here, but really kind of the setup that I've been really tackling now for, it's been actually 2.5 years now, where when I moved into this home, one of the objectives and really a goal of mine was to consolidate all my data feeds, all my runs, including my audio distribution system, my video components, and really kind of contain it into a single location, a hub, if you may, or as some of my colleagues have referred to as a CO, a central office location here. And I happen to luck out in that the room that I'm actually in now is adjacent to a utilities room, and where also my wife is not really bothered by it, considering that it's next to the laundry unit and the utilities room, so it's not an eyesore that's stuck up in the middle of the living room somewhere. It's really out of the way. All the wiring that you see up here is all Cat6 cabling. There's a mixture of some RG6. Well, let me go ahead and pan my camera out this way. The structured media panel that you're looking over here, just adjacent to the rack, is where all my main feeds come in related to video. So for example, I got some DirecTV lines here, and all these feeds are going right back up to the rooms, all the bedrooms, the main living areas. This was a renovation project, so I did knock out a lot of walls and remove drywall upstairs to essentially do all these lines. I did this installation all by myself. It was a project that took me roughly almost a full year in terms of on and off time, of course, but it took me almost a full year to complete all the runs to every single room in this house, including the basement, the main living floor, and the upper level, which consists of the bedrooms, and even the bathrooms are set up. So each single room in this house is completely wired up with Cat6 cabling, RG6. There's also even in some cases there is some fiber in here that I've used, some low voltage wiring for power, and but predominantly the cabling here is all Cat6. And I went with Cat6 because they were relatively cheap. Cat6 and Cat6A and Cat7 were relatively expensive at the time, and for my applications, for my purposes, my needs, I really didn't need Cat7, so I decided to just go with Cat6. It has enough bandwidth capabilities to support the gigabit network that I am running here. The way I'm going to tackle this, I'm going to start from the top and kind of work my way down and explain the different components that are installed in this rack. Now you'll see that I have a 24-port patch panel. I have a switch and a router, which is a MikroTik brand. I'll explain this here in a minute. Right below that, I also have an additional 24 port patch panel. Below that I have a gigabit Ethernet switch by Netgear, and then the last patch panel right below that is an actual 12 port. So I have a total of 48 ports up top and then an additional 12, and just below that I have a gateway from AT&T Uverse that I used to run an IPTV, but that's no longer the case. I strictly use it now for the POTS. Right next to that is another gigabit switch. Actually, it's another Netgear box. I'm using this solely for testing purposes and redundancy, and also just I have independent PCs upstairs and machines that I'm running that if I ever need to test anything internally, troubleshooting anything, I can always log in here. So that's really what the purpose behind that. Below that you'll probably recognize that's a cable modem. That's actually a Motorola surfboard. I believe it's the SB6141. My ISP currently is Comcast, and I am running I believe the Extreme package, which I'm getting anywhere between 75 to 95 megabits megabyte download speeds, and my upload on that is anywhere between 10 and 12, which kind of sucks really. That's kind of the bottleneck of this entire setup. The irony is, you know, it looks nice here, it looks all cool, but unfortunately the bottleneck right now is my upload, which really is what I like to use it for a lot, considering I do a lot of LAN, FTP sessions, and I also stream a media server. So this tends to be the bottleneck. However, once gigabit is available in my neighborhood, I'm planning to upgrade to that package. Now next to this modem, you'll see another switch. However, this is a PoE switch. Let me go ahead and pan down my camera here. Now, the purpose of this PoE switch is to independently power my indoor surveillance. I have 4 IP PoE cameras, security cameras, installed inside my home, including a baby monitor that requires PoE power rather than running independent power sources, and along with another Ethernet. The nice thing about having a PoE IP camera is it eliminates you know, the hassle of extra wiring and whatnot. It really simplifies that solution here. So this is an 8-port PoE switch. Currently I have it set up so that 4 are my IP cameras. Another one is it's an open slot that I'm currently installing another IP camera, indoor camera for my garage. And then the last port that I'm using here is for a Control4 touchscreen that also uses a PoE to power it on and provide data connection to it. So that's how I have these configured, and the reason I have them in purple is to identify that any purple runs here are my surveillance connections. And as you can see, the 4 PoE connections hook up to the second 24 port patch panel right up top here, utilizing 6 of those. Now the middle section here, you'll see they're all white Cat6 cables. Now these are what I call kind of my redundant and my backup Cat6 lines. Each single room in this house throughout the home has redundancy, so that in the event of any failure, even during my runs when I was feeding all the lines to other individual rooms, in the event that one of the cables got spliced or damaged, I wanted to make sure that I have some form of redundancy. So these are also running to an unmanaged switch, which is that Netgear. It's a 24-port switch. It's a gigabit switch. Now these are also designed so that they're only accessing internally my home network. There is no, some of these do access the outside world, however, they're really meant for the backup, but also any LAN work that I'm running through virtual machines, etc. So it's really meant for internal usage along with the backup, as I've indicated. The first 6 ports, you'll see that these are black Cat6 cables. Now this is actually running, they go to individual music keypads that are in my bedrooms, my living space, or excuse me, my kitchen, and also my office area. I really like this setup. It's a few years old now, but it's actually a carryover from my previous house, and this is how I run my audio distribution throughout the home. I have in-ceiling speakers in virtually all the bedrooms, including my main living area, my office. And the nice thing about this system is that it uses Ethernet as a means to send the communications, the audio, to these individual keypads that I'll be showing here. and each keypad can control individual up to four audio sources. In this case, 4 analog sources or digital sources, and they're independently controlled of each other. So, for example, if my wife wanted to kind of chill out and read a book or something and have some music playing in the background in one room, I could be in my office jamming to some heavy metal or something and have my own source of music without bothering her. So we each have our own source of music, independent of each other. And the nice thing about this solution, and really one of my favorite things, is that I can control everything from that keypad, everything from my channel source, my audio source, my volume adjustments. I can even do Bluetooth. I can add an external source to it from my wall using one of these fancy plugs that I got up here in one of these examples. So that's my music distribution system. That is the sole purpose of this box, and it's all done via Ethernet, which is why I have it here. Didn't really touch upon on the switch here is this is a switch and a router. It's a kind of a two-in-one device, but it's an enterprise grade switch that I really like a lot. It's made by a company called Microtik. I believe they're Taiwanese or maybe even South Korean. I've learned about them over the last few years. They're really, are comparable, if not just equivalent to the Cisco enterprise routers or even the Netgear equipment. They're very reliable from what I understand. I've had this one for a couple years now, and really the reason I end up going with this switch, and it's also a router, is for the layer 3 management. This thing is fully customizable. I have dedicated, some of these ports for VLAN. I can go in there and customize individual ports. I can have some customized different levels of throughput. I have also had some firewall set up. It's fully manageable, which is really the important and key thing about it for security features. And another nice little perk that it really has, you can see up here, has a little built-in display. And really what this does is serves a couple of purposes. It actually, I can individually go to each single port, any of these 24 ports, and look at its current utilization. I can look at my throughput levels. It gives me a nice view, high-level view of my packets, my data, the bandwidth that I'm allocating. I can individually search by different Ethernet ports here. I can fully look at IP addresses, making sure I got the correct state. Instead of logging into the PC and kind of going in there and going to the menus, this is more or less a nice way to get a quick look into my Microtik router and switch. I mentioned before all the red Cat6 cables here are running to my main living area, my office, and along with some bedrooms upstairs. I did talk a little bit about the blue Cat6 cables you see here. These are actually configured in a VLAN. There's some firewall. These are designated so that only I can access these ports internally. There's no access to the outside world. And again, another one of the nice features of this having a managed switch is that I am able to designate and customize the ports as I see fit. Now coming back here, you'll notice there's two Cat6 cables here. The first one would obviously be, this is coming in from the cable modem below it. That's my main ISP. So this is where I get my DCHP. And above that is actually acting as an access point for my wireless connections upstairs. I'm actually using a consumer product hacked with the DDWRT open source software, and an old, or not old, but relatively new ASUS router that I got configured as an access point. So this feed here, this Cat6, actually is connected to a closet and conveniently located in the central part of the home. And so I do have some additional Cat6 cables running to that, and that's where I have the access point. So, and I have a guest network also configured within this, so that if any of my guests come in, I'm running independent 2G and 5G Wi-Fi connections, and those access points are coming in from this pipeline here, which is my port 2. I also have the ability to do a 10 gigabit connection, but I currently do not have that set up. The switch does allow me to do that. It has an SFP1 connection here, which currently is not utilized, but I do have that ability for some future expansions, and something that I might keep in mind for one of my servers that I'm currently working on. So let's go back down. and I'll talk about the remaining components left in the rack here. So coming off my DirecTV equipment here, this is the Genie system. Many of you may be familiar with how DirecTV works nowadays. Unlike the previous generation and the previous models, DirecTV Genie now is kind of a server client type system where the Genie DVR in this case acts as the server, and there's mini clients that are connected to the actual TV themselves, and those little mini box clients are connected back to this DVR to the Genie system. Right below it, you'll see it's actually about 2 or 3 generations hardware, DirecTV hardware. That's actually an over-the-air tuner. It's an off-air tuner that came in the previous generations before the new Genie model came out. Now, the reason I decided to keep this is it is a phenomenal over-the-air tuner, and its sole purpose is to capture and really lock in all the over-the-air channels that we get for free. And instead of using the DirecTV feed that they provide for your local HD channels, I instead resort to this. So for example, if I'm watching channel 32 local feed, it would be 32-1 on the over-the-air tuner, and I actually do find that there's a picture quality difference, and oftentimes it's attributed because of the compression that's it runs through the satellite versus non-compression going directly to the tuner. And again, that's all tied back into my roof antenna that's in the patch panel over here in the cabinet, and then that main feed gets distributed back out, and then one of those lines runs right back into this OTA tuner. And I also have it installed here for ease of troubleshooting in the event that I have any satellite feed issues, or I come across any of the problems with the Genie connections. All my lines are running through here, one central location, one-stop shop. So it really simplifies my troubleshooting in the event that I have some kind of signal loss. And I also have an external monitor attached to this box so that I can actually view the TV. So I do have an HDMI out that's running to both the main feed, and I also have component as a backup to look at the live streams. So I don't necessarily have to run up and down the stairs or to the different rooms where these clients are located at. I can simply look at it from down here and not even worry about it. And all this is all tied into an RF module, an IR blaster to an RF blaster. That's all controlled through the Control 4 system. And the nice thing about this Control 4 solution is that everything gets tied in here. I have that 7-inch touch screen that located in my kitchen wall that enables me to go ahead and control all my different sources, my lighting, my music, my audio sources, my video sources. I can even, shut my lights off. I can go ahead and control my temperature via the Nest thermostat that I have. It also enables me to look into my surveillance systems. So, and it really automates all that for me. And really the whole purpose of this whole box, although it's not necessarily a consumer level automation system, it's more in the professional line of things. But this particular model is kind of an entry level. And I would highly suggest this for anybody interested in any kind of professional home automation system. It's a phenomenal little box. I've always enjoyed Control 4 products. They're reasonably priced considering what they're capable of doing. Yeah, I find it to be a great solution for anyone interested in looking into home automation. And again, all this is every component here, whether it's my audio, video sources, it's all somehow tied back into this. And I have full control on that 7-inch touchscreen that I have up against my kitchen wall. Right above it is the actual outdoor surveillance DVR system that I have by Amcrest. This is a 1 terabyte DVR, and this is strictly for my outdoor surveillance system that I have. I'm running a 4-channel setup currently on 1080p cameras. They're outdoor ceiling cameras, they're weatherproof. And this machine with the 1 terabyte, I can roughly get about maybe 3 weeks, give or take, worth of archive footage that I can always trace back and log into and get in there and really, if ever in the event that anything happens, I can always go back and check my outdoor surveillance footage. I do have the option of hooking up a keyboard here, and you can see I even have a mouse that enables me to get into the menu system and configure it, customize it as I please through motion, time, storage, etc. So it's a very reliable, rock solid surveillance system. It's another system I really like and enjoy a lot. Their GUI is really clean, simple. Amcrest is also the same cameras that I'm using for my, let me go ahead and pan up here, for those IP PoE cameras. They're also 1080p streams, so I can access all these remotely, internally, you know, through my own. I have independent VLANs that I have set up. These are 2 of the 4 sources that I'm currently using right now, so that I can go ahead and control in those independent keypads that I was referring to earlier. So this is a tuner. This is strictly an HD tuner, so it's AM and FM. It's a solid little box, and again, I wanted to contain it here as well. And I also have IR blasters that converted to RF via the this IR to RF blaster adapter. This is actually made by Universal Remote that also uses essentially ties in all my audio video equipment. I get all the IRs and it ties them back into here, and that converts it to RF. And there's an RS-2232 connection back to the Control 4 system, and essentially I can control anything, whether it's independently through the Control 4 solution or through those independent keypads that are tied into the Musica server. So that's what these are. These are strictly for audio, and these are really designated for the Musica distribution system. So right below that is kind of where I've been getting a lot of the questions, and really kind of where most of the conversation has been engaged, and people are wondering, what in the world am I running here? So you'll see these are 224 bay super micro chassis server units. Now this top one here, I have it configured with FreeNAS operating system. If anyone's not familiar with FreeNAS, it's an open source software that essentially is for enterprise or really any SOHO kind of solution. It's free. It's a wonderful community, and a great community for supporting the system. There's always upgrades. I personally think it's probably the best operating system out there available today for any kind of NAS solution or storage or backup or security. Anybody familiar with FreeNAS knows that they use the ZFS format, which is very reliable, very rock solid, and I am currently using 24 terabyte on this particular server here. Now this one, these two are actually, this is the active one. You probably see some lights right now flashing. This is actually my main media server, and I use Plex to not only manage all my media, but also control it, stream it locally or remotely. I'm also a big fan of Kodi, another popular open source software. It's kind of a multimedia management software between your server and your clients. So this is a dedicated media server. This is all this does. And again, I currently am running 24 terabyte, which I know it sounds excessive, but you know, nowadays with 4K video, home movies, storage, backup, music, photos, archival, 24 terabytes is it goes pretty quick. You'd be surprised. And also, although I'm only using 24 terabyte, right now I probably have about 18, maybe 16 of that is currently used up. I'm currently expanding this last section here, and then the one right below it is kind of the work in progress server. It's currently off right now, but this is going to be acting as a backup to a lot of my personal information here and my multimedia, but it's also my own cloud, and I'm also going to be running FreeNAS on this as well. And I'm actually going to install about 48 terabyte. So this is going to encompass a combination of, it's going to serve as both a backup to this guy here, but also my own personal cloud and some archival. And I'm actually running a test server right now, which is this little guy here, which is it's an HP ProLiant. It's a DL360GS. It's a single chassis. It's a 1U unit server chassis, and although it's a couple years old now, maybe a few years old, I picked it up off Craigslist again. Guy was selling a few of these, and where I'm running this for is it's a virtual machine. I'm independently testing several OSs right now. I currently have Fedora 23. I might run Ubuntu on it, some kind of Linux OS. This stuff fills up pretty quickly, and storage is so cheap nowadays. And, you know, I am running enterprise level hard drives here. These are all 10,000 RPM, 2.5 inch, I believe. It's a combination of Barracuda. I got some HP drives in here, some Seagate. So I like to kind of mix it and that, you know, have different batches. But up here I'm actually running 4 SSDs at 160 gigabyte. These are SanDisk. I have 4 SSDs. These are standard 2.5-inch disc hard drives. So right now, again, this is strictly for purpose of just testing and just kind of running different software and operating systems. It's just more like a test bay here. So it kind of gives me the luxury of playing around with different systems and really kind of learning too along the way. So I'm going to pan down here the last portion of the system here and the components, and that is the power protection, the conditioner, and the UPS systems. You'll notice I have a Panamax. It's an M5400. It's an actual power conditioner, and although it's made for home theater applications. From above I have several audio and video hardware components, and those are actually being fed through here. It serves multiple purposes. It cleans up any power, any dirty lines, and it really conditions, make sure that we got clean signal and voltage is stabilized. So you'll see here it shows my amperage and my volts, along with the different banks that I have activated on. And then that's all this is fed, and this is strictly for my audio video component. And in fact, I think I might have my modem in here and a couple other of the networking devices. So right below that is what I would consider one of the most important pieces of hardware for any home network solution, and that is UPS systems. I think UPS systems are often overlooked, and you know, I often have friends that always losing power or run into some voltage spikes and God knows what else. Perhaps they never had any backup, or they do have a nice little home setup, but then they always fail to have some kind of protection behind all that equipment and some kind of backup power in the event of an outage, lightning strikes, etc. So, you know, I've always said that your equipment and your home network is only as good as your UPS system and your backup solution that you have in place. And in my case, although these are not rack mounted, I am running 3 independent UPS systems. This first one here, these both here are CyberPower. This one I believe is a 1500 AVR solution. This one's 1000. This one is actually exclusively tied into those 2 big beast servers, the Super Micro chassis, the 3 servers up top. I'm actually already had an order 3 more, so that each server will have its own independent power. Right now I can get about 15 minutes worth of backup or power down in the event of an outage. This middle one, it's a little older CyberPower backup unit, but it's pretty solid. I just got a new battery in it, so it works like a champ. Now this one is tied into more of the smaller network equipment, such as the cable modem, the router, the switch, and the rest of the equipment that I have up there for networking. And this little one up here is actually a battery backup unit that came in with the AT&T Uverse solution. So I'm still using that for my POTS line and something else I forget off the top of my head. But that's really meant for that, so that at least if I ever need an emergency for my landlines, I have a backup for the phone. I can always dial 911 out. So that really concludes the bottom part of the rack. As you can see from the background there's still some cable management and some cleanup that I still have to finish up. But for the most part, I wanted to kind of give everybody a little bit more details of what I'm running, the equipment that I have here. So let me go ahead and pan up, kind of give you the low POV shot here of my setup. One thing I forgot to mention is when I had this, when I was doing these renovations, I asked my electrician to give me 3 independent 20 amp outlets specifically for this room. So I had a 200 amp service actually dropped in from 100, the former 100 amp service that I had, and I had that upgraded to a 200 amp service. So right now I'm actually running 3 dedicated 20 amp outlets here specifically for the servers. A lot of this equipment runs 24/7, so it does require a lot of power, but I am in the process of also upgrading some of the power supplies from these servers, as they're a little bit loud, but they're not as efficient as I'd like them to be. They do have redundant power supplies as well, so that's another reason why it's kind of loud in here. But that's a future upgrade. In the meantime, the nice thing about being in this room It's kind of tucked in away from the rest of the house, so you really can't hear much unless you're really down into this room. And that's kind of one of the nice things. The wife really allowed me to kind of have my little playroom here. Gives me the chance to kind of play around with my network, do upgrades without really bothering. So everything's centrally located. All the feeds come into one place, one drop stop. So there it is, folks. If you guys have any other questions, comments, anything else you guys would like me to dive into any more details, I welcome the suggestions or comments, feedback. I really appreciate it. And again, thank you again for tuning in. I'll be making more of these videos soon as I continue to upgrade and make modifications and changes in my network, and amongst other things, and with my automation, and do constant upgrades. So please be tuned if you like my channel, albeit I have just 2-3 videos up here, but hopefully this is the beginning of something good, and I can continue this path, and nerds alike can collaborate here. So appreciate everybody. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you guys soon. Thank you.